From Evil Seeds, a Turok novella by Fabian Nicieza. This story takes place after the death of Primar Gen and was released on the official Turok website from December 16, 1998 to April 1, 1999. Chapter 6. Hijacked by the Hijacks. There was a certain sense of serenity about failing, if it meant falling through a rushing well of inky darkness to your death, Joshua Fireseed thought. He had fallen plenty of times in his life. A baseball player knew all about tripping and tumbling. He had failed often enough too, considering that his sport of choice was one where succeeding only a third of the time made you a multi-millionaire superstar. Even as a campus stud at Oklahoma College at Oklahoma City, Josh realized that success was measured by the number of times you had the courage to step up to the plate. Everybody struck out or hit a ball back to the pitcher once in a while. It wasn't until Josh assumed the mantle and responsibility of being Turok, the techno-magic Saquin Native American protector of the gateways between Earth and an interdimensional sewer called the Lost Land, that failing took on a much greater scope. Striking out with the bases loaded in front of your hometown fans didn't amount to much when compared to doing it with the fate of an entire universe on the line. His family lineage obligated him to become Turok, but hadn't properly prepared him for the overwhelming responsibilities. His on-the-job training had been going relatively well, considering he had survived and saved all of reality on a few occasions. And he respected each individual assignment he undertook as Turok, enough not to be embarrassed that he was plummeting to his death as a result of fighting a few lame-ass alien grunts. He ran through a checklist of possibilities regarding a way to stop his fall through the cavernous interior of the Barakian collective biological landmass being. Open up a fold-gate gateway between Earth and the Lost Land. He looked through the black folding eye lens on his headband one more time. No invisible doorways in sight, he thought. Fire a tether line into the sides of the cavern to stop his descent. Tried it. Pitons didn't take the first time. Second time he nearly ripped both his arms out of their sockets before the pitons popped out of the thick rock-like walls that made up the cracked skin of the Barakian. Fire a grappling hook upwards, hoping to snag onto something. Well, his light burden, the seemingly empty satchel at his side, was a near limitless provider of weaponry through its infinite maw. Emphasis on the word near. Batarangs were certainly not a part of the arsenal available to him. He considered firing a barrage of plasma bursts from a pulse rifle downwards in the hope of getting the Barakian skin to crumble and create a wedge of some kind. But at the speed he was now falling, any such collision would probably kill him anyway. He could fly back up. Oh, scratch that, he thought. I can't fly. Maybe, if he tried running real fast in mid-air like they do on all the cartoons, he could run up the sides of the Barakian cliff. Sure, he reconsidered. At the very least, let's try dying with some dignity, okay? He could feel his descent coming to an end. Even in the darkness, his senses were acute enough to know the bottom of the Barakian's feet were coming closer. Josh reached into his light burden, removing a grenade launcher in a soft whisper of chimes and a passing scent of evergreen. He figured that closing the width of the crevice formed the ground up might be his best bet. If he were going to die anyway, at least he'd die trying. That's when his body started to tingle from head to toe. A glow of light crept over his body. He looked at his hands in the pitch dark and was surprised to see that the glow wasn't around his body. The light actually was his body. His physical form was somehow transforming itself into an energy or light state. Was this some kind of Turok failsafe he wasn't aware of? His last, though, before completely discorporating into a nimbus of pure light, was to dismiss that notion. Too many of his ancestors had died bloody deaths for the lineage to have some kind of an anti-death warranty built into the job. Still, if he had to choose a way to die, Josh couldn't decide which was better, becoming a pile of yogurt at the foot of the Barakian, or becoming a haze of light dissipating into the chill, dank air within the alien's legs. The choice was taken out of his hands. His body converted to pure light. The shape and form of his former physical figure drifted, like curls of cigarette smoke, and slowly lost all sense of form. The first thing he thought as his body gradually regained its physical cohesion was, "No, wait!" There was a pure serenity to existing as a being of sentient, diffused light that he had never felt before and knew he might never feel again. Joshua wondered if this is what the afterlife felt like, to have such a sense of complete balance and an innate understanding regarding how the pieces of the puzzle all fit together was something he rarely contemplated. Metaphysical meandering and spirituality had never been very high on his list of priorities in life. He could feel his skin again. He could sense the fall and rise of his chest as his lungs breathed again. He blinked and even felt his eyelids slide over his pupils. For a split second, everything had a crispness to it beyond that which the enhanced senses of a Turok could normally detect. Therefore, the aroma of brute that emanated from Barry Hackowitz was nearly enough to asphyxiate Josh. Barry slapped his best friend on the back as Josh doubled over and gagged for a breath of fresh air. "Hey, I know that first breath is a killer," his thin, gangly tool of a roommate said in an obnoxiously pleasant nasal whine. "Your first breath probably wasn't half a bottle of that crap you call aftershave," replied a still gasping Joshua. Barry unconsciously smelled his arms as Joshua regained his sense of self. He looked around. He was on a large butte overlooking the expansive devastation which the Barakian landmass had caused when it rose from the ground. Adon, the bioelectric sentient lifeform who was the ambassador from the peaceful, unified alien hegemony state of forever light, hovered next to him, her holographic feet 36 inches off the grass. The Barakian was about 2 miles to their west, but its shadow still reached the butte. "What happened?" Josh asked. Aiden spoke, her voice an eerie mix of hollow emptiness and a warm breeze. "I accessed the communications cybernetic circuitry you had implanted before undertaking the survey mission into the pregnant Barakian hours ago. From there, it was a relatively simple matter to access your biosynaptic patterns, converting your matter into a malleable form of photons, and draw your signal wavelength through the transmitter systems Barry was carrying." "Okay, let me ask again. What happened?" said Josh, turning to look at Barry with a blank stare. "She saved your life," he answered. "Same way she got me out of the netherscape you left me in, which, by the way..." "I did it for your own safety when those aliens started firing on us," interrupted Josh. "Which, by the way, I was going to say, gave me the time I needed to figure out the genealogical probabilities on that whole Scooby-Doo, Scrappy-Doo thing that had been bugging me for days," Barry finished. "So I can't look forward to those nervous 3 a.m. wake-up calls to discuss the subject anymore?" "Darn," said Josh. Turning to Aiden, he continued, "So since when can you convert other people's matter into energy?" A hint of a knowing smile slipped past Aiden's lips and she said, "How would you say it? Just a new trick I picked up." Muttered Josh. "Well, thanks." "You're quite welcome," she replied. "I much prefer you in this form than in what the result of landing at the bottom of Barakian Collective would have been." "Status report, Mr. Sulu?" Josh snapped at Barry. "The aliens who attacked the survey team and made the Barakian start doing the Continental Lambada are called the Hijacks, sir," Barry said in a ridiculously deep George Takei voice. "And the Hijacks do what?" asked Josh. They hijack things, sir," said Barry. "I knew I shouldn't have asked," Turok mumbled. "Okay, then why did they want to stop us from activating the encephalographic cybernetic implant we had put in the newborn Barakian?" "I'm still impressed that you didn't trip up over encephalographic cybernetic implant," said Barry. "But anyway, apparently they wanted to steal the newborn Barakian for their own purposes, and apparently they don't care that we needed the baby to link to the Barakian Collective in order to create a new bioelectric rhythmic wavelength between the Barakians and the tectonic ley lines which keep the lost land fused together into some semblance of a cohesive state. But don't they realize that if this experiment doesn't succeed, the earthquakes which have been knocking the crap out of Galliana since the Primogen died will pretty much make this place antimatter soup?" asked Josh. "Apparently they do know," replied Aiden, "and they don't care." Josh looked at both his friends. Asphincter says what? He asked. The Hijacks think that they can use the newborn Barakian as a means to create a sympathetic wormhole linking their displaced landscape in the Lost Land and their homeworld back in the real universe, said Barry. So they'll sacrifice billions of beings in order for their small piece of land to return to the planet it was ripped from, asked Josh. That's cold. That is the way of survival in Galliana, Joshua, said Aiden, and has been for billions of years. Is there any chance their plan will work? Josh asked. Is there any chance ours would have? Replied Barry with his own question. I gotcha. We're all just throwing it up against the wall and seeing what'll stick, said Josh. But why can't we negotiate? Convince them to let us finish the experiment, and then maybe they can try theirs. Because their plan will undoubtedly lead to the death of the newborn Barakian, and since only one new bioterrain baby is born to the landmass every few centuries, neither party can afford to wait, replied Aiden. Well, we're not going to let them get away with it, are we? I mean, me and Barry are sort of like that little Spud's godparents, you know, said Josh. Isn't he adorable when he gets paternal? Smiled Barry, handing his friend a pair of alien field glasses. What's the for? Asked Josh, placing them to his eyes. Complications, said Barry. Look around the bottom of what would be the Barakian's left shoulder blade. Josh did so, scanning the glasses up along the immense length of the landmass creature. A shiver ran through his spine as he thought that he had both climbed up and fallen down half the length of that Meshuggah. Some kind of biodome, a hut attached to the exterior of the Barakian, and I see some of those Hijacked Phoebes inside of it. Are they working over a bunch of equipment consoles? Yup, said Barry. They're not doing what I think they're doing, are they? I don't know, said Barry. What do you think they're doing? I think that they're actually driving the Barakian like a car. Well, then you would be correct, sir, said Barry. That is exactly what they're doing. That means they have complete control over the collective now, asked Josh. Even to the point where the probe we put into the baby Buke isn't working? Yup. That's not a good thing, is it? Nope. How are we supposed to get the Barakian back? When no one answered, Joshua pried his eyes from the field glasses and looked at both of his friends. We figured out the problem, mumbled Barry. And we were, well, kinda, I guess. We were, hoping that, Aiden finished the interminable thought, that you would come up with the solution. End of chapter. From Evil Seeds, a Turok novella by Fabian Nicieza.